Hello everyone, this is Phil Rasmussen from Kiwi Herb, and I'm going to talk today about herbal remedies for neonates. Thank you very much to the organisers of the Maternity Natural Health Symposium for inviting me to give this presentation. Whoops. So yeah, for a start, the implications of when you're considering giving herbs or any medicine to a neonate, to a baby or a pregnant mother or an infant, obviously safety first, and efficacy or effectiveness is also a very important objective. So you need to undertake a risk versus benefit assessment. No medicine, including herbal medicine, is always safe in 100.0% of cases. But generally, the evidence and the historical information, as well as a lot of information from what we call pharmacovigilance agencies, so adverse event reporting agencies, including New Zealand's national one, CALM, suggests that plant-based medicines are generally very, very safe in this age group, provided they're used in the traditional and very safe way. So personally, I feel that having herbal medicines made under good manufacturing practice, GMP, by a quality manufacturer is really important. And personally, I'm a huge advocate for using local herbs. Here in New Zealand, we have some of the best herbs in the world, I think. And Kiwi Herb, we generally do try and incorporate local organic growers for our ingredients in our children's products. But yeah, also let's not forget that herbs combine well with drugs sometimes, and there are many examples of this, increasingly so in fact. One of them recently was a clinical trial involving children with tonsillitis, an injection study with 300 kids with tonsillitis. And when they added echinacea to the treatment, to the antibiotic treatment, as azithromycin, the outcomes were a lot better. They had less severe symptoms and the duration of the tonsillitis was lessened. That's just one of many examples where you can use the two together if you know what you're doing. But firstly, skin problems are very, very common in this age group, as we all know. And one of my favourites and one of the most readily available herbs would be calendula, the flowers of the English pot marigold. We now have a number of clinical trials on calendula for all sorts of different skin problems, showing good outcomes, and that includes nappy rash, vaginal thrush in women, and also helping to heal the wound after having a C-section. Secondly, chamomile is again a very well-known European herb. It can work really well for nappy rash as well, but in mums wanting to wean or mums with cracked nipples during breastfeeding, it does work very well. And of course, you can use it internally for teething and sleeping problems, which we'll talk about a bit later. But again, I'm a huge advocate for local herbs, and we have two in particular here in Ronga Māori, in our New Zealand native Māori herbal tradition, that are very effective. Koromiko is one of the best ones for nappy rash, in my experience. It's anti-inflammatory, it's also gently antimicrobial and a little bit astringent, so it can help to heal and just reduce that redness and rawness, as well as help get rid of any infection. And then we have kawakawa, our native pepper tree. And kawakawa is also sometimes effective as a treatment for eczema in children especially, but also it can be very effective if they get bitten, adults or neonates, if they're bitten by mozzies or sandflies. Coughs and colds, though, are some of the most worrying symptoms and illnesses that children and infants get. And of course, until recently, we had some pretty heavy duty drugs that were often given to children in this age group. They contain serious drugs such as dextromethorphan and antihistamines, diphenhydramine. But now the regulators are saying that you shouldn't use these, rightly so. And so one of my favourites again is echinacea. Echinacea does help to enhance immunity, and if you use the root part of echinacea rather than the flowering tots, which have a lot of pollens in them, albeit being cheaper to produce, adverse events are very, very rare. You will get more allergic reactions if you're using a flowering tots based product. But as well as echinacea to enhance immunity, there are many, many herbal expectorants that are very gentle in helping the natural expectoration process. And some of my favourites are marshmallow, mullein, thyme and hyssop. And then, of course, you can use some gentle decongestion herbs or some mucous membrane tonics, such as ribwort. And they're very effective sometimes, particularly with nighttime congestion and where that's affecting the neonate's ability to sleep. But yeah, honey has attracted a somewhat undeserved bad press in recent years as being unsafe for children and infants, and that is based purely upon the presence of this thing called Clostridium botulinum, the spores of this organism in certain batches of honey, 90% of them in the US actually, and obviously it can be very serious if infants, develop this infant botulism. But in fact, in New Zealand, we don't have any single case reports of this having happened since records began in 1987. And that suggests a very low risk of contamination. But even so, I would suggest that responsible companies should nevertheless be testing all their batches of honey for Clostridium botulinum spores. Honey is also, of course, a natural sweetening agent, and to me it's preferable to sugar, which a lot of companies use and a lot of people use in cough syrups, not just pharmaceutical companies. Tummy and digestive upsets, infantile colic are very, very common and very distressing for the parents as well as the infant. And usually that's due to some intolerance to cow's milk protein or lactose, or just immaturity of the overall digestive system. Sometimes poor feeding techniques, but usually it's just the age of the child. And chamomile, again, as I said earlier, is a really, really good herb, not just for topical inflammatory conditions, but also to help to relax a child. And it's anti-inflammatory, it's anti-spasmodic on the gut. And so like kawa, it can be really useful in colic and tummy upsets in infants. You can go quite high with a dose of chamomile. Sometimes you need to, it is very safe. And again, increasingly, we're starting to see clinical trial validation, a clinical trial with chamomile, lemon balm, and lactobacillus, for instance, showing good outcomes there. And then, of course, ginger. Ginger, when added to expressed breast milk or added to jelly or yogurt in infants, can sometimes be very effective. So that's all I have time for today, I'm afraid. There are a couple of websites that might be useful. There's one to my blog, herblab.com, if you're interested in herbal matters and herbal discussions. And there are a number of references at the end. There's been a number of clinical trials on honey being really effective for coughs in children, and I've referenced all of those there as well. So again, thank you very much, and ka kite anō.